Hey, my name's Eric, and I'm listening to 100 albums in 100 days. For all the details on what I'm doing and why, check out the video pinned to my profile. Today, I listened to the 1976 album from Aerosmith, Rocks. Um, I was your typical 80s Aerosmith fan. I liked and listened to everything from Walk This Way with Run DMC on, everything you heard on the radio or saw on MTV. I liked and listened to. I don't think I ever actually owned an Aerosmith tape or CD or album, but I liked them. I actually saw them in concert in '88 for their Permanent Vacation tour. I actually went to that show, not for them, but for their opening act, Dokken. But I stayed, of course, I stayed for them anyway. Great show, but I'd never heard anything prior to the '80s except for the songs everybody hears, "Dream On" and "Sweet Emotion." So I wanted to hear something pre-'80s, and this is a very different band than what you hear in the '80s. '80s, they're polished and they're older. These guys in the '70s are a little bit more raw, a little bit more garage band, and they are just a very different band. Got a much harder edge to them. This is a rock and roll album. I'm a huge fan of the movie Dazed and Confused, and hearing this kind of album makes me wish that I was about 10 years older, so I could have gone to high school when all this music from the '70s was out, because this would be my music. Aside from the song that everybody's heard on this album, "Back in the Saddle," it's just got a bunch of really good songs on there. "Sick as a Dog," "Rats in the Cellar," "Combination," "Get the Lead Out." Those are all really great songs. And you can hear in some of these songs guitar riffs and licks that have been lifted and adapted and used by '80s bands in their songs. That's how influential this album was. And I remember reading that Slash from Guns N' Roses said that this album was what made him want to play guitar and being a rock band. So it's a very influential album. It's a very different album than anything I've ever heard from Aerosmith, but I really liked it. One thing I did not know, in the '80s, in the late '80s, 80, 88, 89, around there, when I was 18, 19 years old, I was really getting into thrash metal. And one of my favorite bands was Testament. And they had a song on one of their albums titled "Nobody's Fault," and I thought it was it was their own song, and I really like. That's probably one of my favorite Testament songs. Well, listening to this album, I had no idea that it was a cover of a song on this album. That's an Aerosmith original. Now that I've heard Aerosmith version, I don't know which one I like better. That's one of my favorite Testament songs, but now that I've heard the original, man, it's a toss-up. They're both really good, and it's a very, to me, it's a very different song from all the other songs on this album. But there's just not a lot that I disliked on this album. It's really great. So if you're an Aerosmith fan, you've probably heard this. Let me know your thoughts. If you haven't heard this album, it's worth the listen. I will listen to it again, probably. I don't know when, but I will, because it's just a rocking album. So give me your thoughts if you've heard it. If you haven't, I would encourage you to go check it out.